Alan Little. Well, now we're joined again by Rory Bremner, still with us, and I think he might be leaning towards a no vote. We're also joined by the writer Damian Barr, who's firmly in the no camp, the actor and writer David Hayman, and the historian Sir Tom Devine, both in favour of independence. Last but not least, Linda Colley, who doesn't have a horse in the race, but is perhaps the greatest historian of the Union. David Hayman, you have been very much involved in the campaign over the last couple of years, and you've commissioned a play which you appear in, which talks about Scottish independence. How much is your decision as much about identity, heart over head, as it is about anything else?
It's very simple, Kirsty. It's not necessarily about identity. I just want to live in a better country, a country that's a small, progressive, European, peace-loving country with social justice and democracy you know, at its heart. I mean, whether I would be Scots or English or Welsh, it wouldn't make any difference to me. I just think we have to improve the quality of life for all of us, and I think our values are getting warped around the world, and I think we have a wonderful opportunity, because we are a separate nation, to be able to create a new paradigm for how we all live together.
Damian Barr, can you put the same passion into the argument for the Union?
Well, I mean, I don't think anybody doesn't want the things that David wants. Nobody wants a small, toxic, backward-looking, parochial, you know, country that isn't progressing in the world. I want those same things, but I disagree about how we achieve them. I think the best way to achieve them is to stay in the Union. I am a citizen of Scotland. I am not resident in Scotland, so my vote has been taken away. I'm one of the nearly 800,000 people who were born here who are not allowed to have a say in the future, and that makes me incredibly angry.
And do you think that the decision would be, whatever it is, would be influenced quite heavily by those who are outside the country?
I think that it's great that the whole country is talking about it. It does affect the whole country, and it's really great that, you know, tonight I get in a cab on the way over here and it's the very first thing that comes up. I think it's exciting, but I don't think that we need to break the Union up to do new things in Scotland. The government already has many powers that it doesn't use. You know, this Scottish government could raise income tax by 3 pence, spend it all on the arts, spend it all on the NHS. They haven't done it. Why do they want more powers?
Well, Tom Devine, you famously have said that you've been on a journey, and in an article last weekend you finally nailed your colours to the mast and said that you were going to vote yes. What was that journey? What were the points on that journey?
Reflection, thinking about where we are in terms of my own profession, that is history. Seeing where Scotland is likely to go. Seeing what I think is the quite massive decline in the Union connection, and also seeing the potential. And also particularly, I think, we are now a mature nation. We are now a mature nation in terms of identity, as has already been said this evening. We're also got, I think, a much more resilient economic system. It's not necessarily the best in the world, but it's certainly resilient in terms of what it used to be as late as the 1970s, 1980s. And of course, the other very important thing is, if you've got an entity like that, a collective sentiment that is a nation, and you're still in dependency, as we are, because the Scottish Parliament, despite the number of very good things that it's done, is actually still dependent on a block grant from another country. And the final thing I would say is that, Kirsty, the difference, I mean, both countries, England and Scotland, have got similar, almost identical social problems of inequality and the rest. But there are developing different political cultures and voting patterns between England and Scotland, which in my view cannot really be dealt with except an amicable release between the two countries.
Well, Linda Colley, you are a historian of a union. You are the historian of the Union. Do you see that trajectory differently?
Well, I do. I mean, nationalism tends to create an other against which it can define itself. And so it's tempting to say, oh, England is different. English politics are different.
Identity is different.
Identity is different. But, you know, English politics aren't always different. You look at voting patterns in the northeast of England, there's hardly any Conservatives there. And I think most countries, like most human beings, contain multiple identities. Yeah. And I think that's very healthy. I think one of the challenges of periods of political excitement is that there's a temptation to over-streamline identity. And I think we need to keep it multifarious.
Is that it's far too binary, actually?
No, I think Scotland still retains that penumbra of identities, from the local to the Scottish to the international.
So what is it about sensibility that's different?
Actually, I would welcome the north of England joining us. Because this is an issue, quite seriously, ladies and gentlemen, between the southern of England, particularly south of the Severn Trent line, the metropole, and some parts of the southeast. The area, Kirsty, you know well from your travels. I think that is the essential differential.
Well, let me talk to Rory about that, because you know that area very well. This is your territory.
Well, yeah, but just coming back to the thing, I mean, I think there is a problem at Westminster, and there is a problem with England. I would be in favour of seeing a more federal United Kingdom. Yeah. I think there is that's a problem, but I don't necessarily, as I've been thinking about this, think that Scotland splitting up from the rest of the United Kingdom is the answer to that question. Yesterday, for example, the headline in the newspaper was a poll amongst English people, and the English were polled and asked about it, and they said, well, OK, if Scotland voted for independence, we wouldn't want them to keep the pound, and actually, even if they didn't vote for independence, we want to have their public spending cut. So what's happening is that you're setting a nation against itself, that English people, they're going to harden their position. I mean, Alex Salmond might say, oh, well, this is the sovereign will of the Scottish people, but what English people will say, OK, well, sod you then, we don't care about it.
Let me bring Damian into this. But do you see this discussion in a way as being corrosive of the relationship, no matter what happens?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's very hard to find positive things about it at this stage. So many of the English people I know living down in Brighton, people are like, oh, please don't go, don't leave us. They're kind of, clutching at you as you walk out the door. And I think maybe the more radical thing to do, the braver thing to do, is to stay and actually be radical within the Union. Let's not forget that Scotland can be a force for good for the other constituent countries in the Union, and help those people, help affect change. It's not all about us.
David Hayman.
It's really interesting. I think it was about 10 years ago, John Prescott was deputy leader of the Labour Party, and he offered the northeast of England autonomous political power, a devolved power, and it was unanimously rejected. Now, I've spent the last 2 summers doing a TV series in Newcastle. They've completely changed their minds. If that offer was on the table today, they would accept it and say yes, overwhelmingly. I think that backs up Tom's argument about, let's devolve everything away from London, which is just like a great suction. I mean, just sucking, wealth and talent and people.
That's right. But that's an argument for devolution rather than for independence. And Tom, you're a historian. You know that some of the greatest moments of Scottish identity were during the Enlightenment with Adam Smith,
David Hume.
and David Hume. And that was under the Union. So that's the thing. I mean, I don't want to have to make this decision. This is the thing, and I've been wrestling with it all along.
Linda.
That's why.
Yeah, I think one of the many mistakes David Cameron has made was not to include Devo Max as an option. Because one of the repercussions has been to polarise. Because the reason why I'm part Welsh, part Irish, part English. I'm not a Scot. I don't have a vote this September. But I'd actually find it difficult to know which way to go because I don't want the status quo. I don't want Scottish secession. What I'd like is Devo Max in this country as an integral part of a constitutional reordering. And reimagining of the UK.
And that's what you wanted at first, Tom Devine, but it wasn't there.
Because it's not simply Cameron. Cameron, I totally agree with you, Linda, made a major error in not allowing this. Yeah. But there was obviously reasons why he made that error. But in a sense also, Salmond and the SNP may also have made an error because they didn't go for a gradualist approach to their potential goal, the raison d'etre of the SNP being independence. He may well regret that because I know in the internal councils of the Scottish National Party there was discussion about first having a vote over Devo Maximus, which would have delivered a huge majority, bedding it down, and then in 5 years' time coming down and asking for the next one. A lot of people, if there is a no vote, will say that was a bridge too far, a gamble too quickly. Better for an evolutionary and gradualist approach to take place. To go back to Linda's point, if on that fateful morning in September we wake up and there's a no vote, I hope there is a maximum yes vote as well, because that will create the kind of scenario where you can then move into federalist or Devo Max conversation.
On that very point, David Hayman, do you think the danger is, and whatever way it goes, but just say it goes no, that the yes campaigners have invested so much emotionally in it that it's going to be a huge downer for you, and it's going to be a real shuddering problem for people that wanted that, as in a way it was culturally in 1979 as well?
I don't think it's going to be a shuddering problem. What I think has been exciting, certainly about the last 2 years, and I've travelled around Scotland making a series of documentaries, the levels of debate levels of debate have been absolutely extraordinary. People are engaging in the politics in a very profound way for probably the first time in their lives. Young people, old people. And it's been very energising and innovating and exciting to hear all this, and some wonderful progressive ideas going around. So there's a force that has been unleashed. I don't think that force is going to go away. Even if it is a no vote, and even if we are disappointed,
correct,
I think it will come back
the
again,
union,
for sure.
whatever happens, the union has already changed.
Yeah. Yes.
The union has changed historically.
Yeah, the union always has changed.
Yes.
Damien,
over the century.
But this will be its most radical change.
I think the question in lots of ways is false. If you think about it, we have our own law, we have our own education system, we have our own church, we have our own language, we have our own weather, as we've all experienced this summer. And I feel like I can't really see what's to be gained, but I can see lots of what's to be lost. And I feel like we should be trying to find common ground for common ground.
There is one word missing in your list, and that is sovereignty.
Yeah.
The capacity to decide, decide what is right for a given...
We have our own parliament. We have our own parliament.
But that parliament is dependent for...
They need to make different decisions.
That parliament is dependent for over 80% of its income from south of the border.
If funding is an issue, why have this...
You're sitting there listening to this, and I wonder what you think in a kind of way whether Scotland, because is this a trajectory? The same way that devolution to this has been a trajectory, and actually it's not going to be like, if there's a no vote, would it automatically be like Quebec's never-endum? I mean, is this a conversation that will keep going, or do you think if there's a no vote on the September the 18th, in a way the governance of the United Kingdom stays the same?
I think some of the polemic of this being a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity puts it to extensively, because I think this is going to be a rolling debate, and you know, there may be, if we get no this time, there may be pressure for another referendum 10 years on, 15 years on, we don't know. What I am concerned about, and what does worry me, is that nationalism historically is a very volatile emotion. It's a very contagious emotion. One has to be careful that relationships in this large island, at the moment called Great Britain, remain as amicable as possible. And I rather worry that that may not remain the case.
Well, just
do you think that, David?
Of being amicable. If you remember, you probably don't know, but before the Commonwealth Games, Team England were counselled in the event of how to deal with boos and jeers when they came to Scotland for the Commonwealth Games. Now, when they walked onto Celtic Park, they got that 40,000 people gave them the warmest, most loving welcome ever.
It was brilliant.
It was absolutely fantastic, and I was so proud of my fellow Glaswegians and fellow Scots. And I think that's the level of love and respect that we have for each other. And I think that will always be there.
We're just about coming to the end of this part of the debate. I just want to run round in a completely unscientific manner. How do you, literally, how do you think it will go? Rory, how do you think it will go?
Well, the polls would suggest, well, it depends on how you look at the polls, but they're suggesting about sort of 50 to 55, 45 or something. Because you know, the nationalists say the polls are narrowing, the unionists say the polls are widening, and Nigel Farage says, why ask the polls, they shouldn't live here.